All right, everybody, welcome back to The Guru and the Good Dude. It has been a couple weeks since I've been in the studio. We've been busy with business and with everything, and I'm super excited to get back in here to talk to someone who has an incredible story. Honestly, we met over at the cigar bar, which is where I meet a lot of very fascinating people. And today is a special day to have this talk. Michelle told me her whole story a couple weeks ago, and I'm sure that there's more to it than what I got in that, 1 hour talk. But this is Michelle Renee, recent transplant from California to Texas. Absolutely. But she feels like a Texas native. I got to tell you that. And I just want to give you an opportunity. This show, The Guru and the Good Dude, is about exploring people's stories, talking about how they wind up where they are today and kind of the trajectory of how they got there. But your story, I kind of want to start with almost the highlight because today, Friday, the 20th,
21st,
November 21st. I forgot what day it was. November 21st is the anniversary of what?
Today is the anniversary of the home invasion, kidnapping, and hostage ordeal that my daughter and I survived.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we'll back up and get into this story a little bit, but it gives me chills to think about this being the anniversary. How many years ago?
Today is actually 25, I believe.
Oh
the
my
big
God.
25. So it's been a long, long time. And what's happened during that time that led to a lot that is actually happening today that we'll get into has been such a ride. It has
Yeah.
just been such an insane ride that has just, with lots of twists and turns and breaking down and breaking open, it's been a lot of both.
I can't believe it. So before we get into that story, let's back up a little bit and tell us a little bit about who Michelle Renee is. And you can start your story wherever you'd like, but we like to start where people grew up. It gives us a little framework for the context. So where were you born and what did you do?
So I'm originally from Boston. I was born in Boston. And my parents moved the whole family to San Diego when I was 8 years old. And my dad actually left ahead of my mom, and my mom drove across country a few months later once my dad had everything set up out on the West Coast. And my mom drove across the country alone with 7 kids.
You have 6 siblings?
I do. And
That's unreal.
all of us were in this like little mini station wagon just piled in there. And my mom was just such this Renaissance kind of woman. I'll never forget that road trip and breaking down and watching her strength. And so coming out here, I think that's really where, and this will lead into more of the story later, but that's where this sort of birthing of my love for road tripping sort of started, I believe, was way back then when my mom took us across country. And I ended up in San Diego, grew up there. I've been there since I was 8 years old until literally just recently, except for a year stint up in Alaska. And, grew up in a home that was not pleasant. It was
Crowded?
It was very crowded. It was also very violent.
Oh.
And I grew up in a very toxic environment. I ran away when I was 15 to get away from all of that.
Wow.
And I didn't want to be around all of that. My mom, she as she was incredible in so many ways. She was a broken woman in a lot of ways as well. And she numbed out a lot in order to be able to cope and deal with what was going on with my dad and 7 kids. And so it was a really difficult environment to navigate growing up with parents that were violent, emotionally unavailable. And, there was a lot to sort of try to figure out. And then leaving home at 15 with really not any tools to know what to do. It was just all survival. Growing up and getting out at 15, it was just all survival.
In terms of the sibling order, like, are you youngest or oldest?
I'm right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
I got 3 bookends on each side.
So you,
right in the middle.
You got the middle child syndrome. Kind of like, did you feel seen? Did you feel big, or did you feel small in that household?
I was nicknamed the peacekeeper, and I was really an observer. I remember sitting back all the time and kind of observing what was going on and observing what was happening. So I wasn't seen. I didn't feel seen or heard at all. I
Mm,
was always, because that was the best way to stay safe in my household.
yeah.
If you weren't seen and you weren't heard and you weren't speaking up, you were going to be the least likely target of any of, the rage, or any of that. So
Right.
that was the safe route. And I did take that route for a really long time in my life and in lots of ways until I decided that that wasn't working for me. And then I went really nuts. Like you told me you're in a rock band. I mean, I went crazy when I ran away and left home. And I ended up dabbling in trying a lot of drugs
Wow.
and nothing too super heavy, but yeah, there was a lot of cocaine, a lot of pot, a lot of acid, a lot of mushrooms, a lot of that.
Well, it was Southern California in what, 70s, 80s?
That was late 80s, that was early 90s, late 80s, early
Oh, early
90s.
90s. Yeah. So,
More early 90s, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, punk rock scene.
Oh yeah. It
Yeah.
was the rock scene. I ended up touring for a little bit with Iron Maiden.
Let's go.
So yeah, I ended up I was wild for a hot minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you leave home at 15. What do you do though? How do you even do that feasibly? Like, you don't have money, I imagine. You don't,
Well,
you
there
know?
was no money. I climbed out my bedroom window and jumped down to what felt like freedom to me. And I
Did you
ended up,
take anything with you?
no,
Nothing.
no, I had some clothes. I had a few things in a backpack. That was it. And I moved in with my boyfriend. We lived in a garage,
Hmm.
and he turned out to be not such a great human at all and had some of the characteristics of my dad. And when if you
Mm,
study psychology, okay, you end up
sure.
attaching to what feels familiar,
It's very
even though it
Freudian.
isn't safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I did that first time around and ended up deciding I couldn't stay in that situation. And I literally concocted a plan to escape from that whole situation.
You
And
were an observer. You were a quiet planner.
I was a quiet planner for
Yeah.
sure. And that situation, 1000%, I was a quiet planner. And I had to do certain things that he didn't know about and save and stack on the side until I had enough to be able to get out of there. And then I actually, there's a lot of things when you decide you're going to be really transparent about your life and honest and really radically honest about your life. I ended
Right.
up, I stole a truck so that I would have a place to sleep, and I put everything in a big hefty trash bag,
Oh my
all my
God.
clothes. And so that's what I would use as a pillow to sleep on. And I did that for a few weeks until I could find a place to live.
Wow.
And then I ended up deciding I was going to go to school. I wanted to go to trade school. I wanted to do something better with my life.
Let me point something out really quick because you said that you grew up in an abusive household and you watched your mom, who you saw as a very strong person, take no action to get out of her circumstance. How did you find the strength to get out of what conditions you were in every time you had to do that?
She took action a few times and always went back.
Hmm.
I mean, we would leave and go stay with friends, and we had CPS come in and take us away from our parents for a while. We had to go live with other people,
Yeah.
all of our siblings. We had to go live in different places. So there was just a lot. There was a lot of
Yeah.
confusion, a lot of trauma, and the strength I believe that I have always had, even when I didn't know what spirituality was, because I didn't grow up in a house that ever talked about spirituality or God or any of that. I would always go escape from that, and I would sit by a stream by myself for hours from really young. Like,
Hmm.
back when parents let their kids do that. It's just
Yeah.
like, be home for dinner. They don't know where you are until then. I mean, I would literally escape and go do that, or I'd sit out on the back porch, or I believe that I was born with sort of an inner connectedness to spirit or to my spirituality before I
Hmm.
ever even knew that I had it, or before I ever even knew what that was. I've always had a deeper center that has been my guide, that I've always sought to go get away and be able to collect my thoughts and be able to sort things out kind of on my own. And I
Yeah.
lost touch with that for a really long time. But that's always been something that's just kind of been there.
That is something that a lot of people search for a really long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, is spiritual guidance. And a lot of people get stuck in decision making because it's so rational and like they're weighing the risks and the rewards and the benefits, and that's what brings them back to an abusive relationship or a toxic ex or
Right.
a job that they hate. And so you're saying that your alignment with your spirit, which is like your North Star, has helped get you to where you're naturally in that flow of life, but you went away from it. When did that happen?
I went away from it when I started, doing drugs and getting into rock and
Mm-hmm.
roll and
Mm.
and there was I discovered a whole different kind of escapism, men.
Yeah,
And I ended up going to trade school. I didn't like being a certified nurse's assistant. I couldn't do it. I feel everything. So
yeah,
I took everybody else's pain home with me. So that was really difficult for me to do that job, even though it's almost like you care too much.
right.
I didn't have the ability to detach. Like, I feel like you really need to be able to compartmentalize
Sure.
differently in that role. And so, but during that time, I met a man who was he was a paraplegic, and he owned a private bachelor party company.
Okay.
And he invited me to a party. I met a bunch of the girls that worked for him that did private bachelor parties, and they said, you should do this. And next thing you know, I'm a stripper for 8 years, and
Wow.
I was just traveling in five different states. And I mean, escapism was the key thing. And for me to be able to be somebody else and
Mm.
have a stage name and escape who Michelle is and dealing with everything that I grew up with and I didn't have to do any of that. I could just forget about all that and
Mhm.
be somebody else and escape into the music, and also the psychology again behind all of those decisions then,
Yeah.
healthy or unhealthy, in survival mode, in trauma mode, not addressing any of the pain whatsoever. I was just escaping the pain in lots of different ways. And that to me was kind of almost getting back at my dad too, like,
Mm.
or any man who's ever hurt me. I was like, now I'm going to. I'm gonna tease you. I'm gonna do whatever. You're never gonna touch me. I'm
It's
gonna
just a
take
little
all your money and I'm gonna give you the big finger.
That's what it is.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
That was the psychology back then. And for a lot of, women who do that, and young women who do
Yeah.
that, I think besides addiction and some other issues they have, a lot of us back then that I discovered were, I don't know, can I cuss on the show?
Sure.
A
Yeah.
big fuck you to men.
Yeah.
It was just a big fuck you to men, like, ha ha,
Yeah. You're
you're
giving
never
me your
gonna,
money.
you're never gonna get it, never
Yeah.
gonna get it.
Oh my God. That
And we're just taking your
makes so
money
much
and teasing
sense.
you. And I never dated anybody in that
Yeah.
environment. I had a rule. I was very business minded then. I would, dance, and then I'd put on a business pencil skirt and some stilettos and a button up top and hand out business cards.
Yeah.
I was super business in that entire environment. And by then I had stopped doing drugs. I completely quit all drugs when I was 20 years old and walked away from that entire lifestyle. So for me, it was a business. And that's how I ended up really starting to get more of the mindset of what it was like to kind of be an entrepreneur in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, strippers are entrepreneurs for sure.
for sure.
They're making sales left and right. They
Left and right.
probably, I mean, it's the meat grinder, but yeah, it's like they have one after the next. It's like new home sales, honestly.
And they've got grit. And there's
Yeah,
women
grit,
there that are single
determination.
moms and they're putting themselves through school and they're
Hmm.
smart and they're savvy
Yeah,
and they're, amazing women. And
sure.
that doesn't get talked about enough for sure, because that's exactly what it was for me. And I met a lot of, really women that their stories were very sad. That was difficult. A lot of them became prostitutes, but a
Mm,
lot of them, most of them did not.
yeah.
Tons of them don't do drugs. Tons of them aren't
No,
prostitutes.
I mean a lot. I mean, look at the last 4 or 5 years with what's happened with OnlyFans. Like
Oh yeah,
these women are running $1 million businesses, and sure, they're the product, but they're like they have people working for them, and their dollar per hour is
exactly,
unbelievable. So
exactly.
leverage your time, leverage your skills, and but in the time that you were doing that over 8 years, you're learning how to network, you're learning how to run a business, how to, do other things. But when did you start to transition into another business? What did you do after that eight
So
years?
I ended up getting married, and I decided at that time when it was time for me decide to have a family and
Hmm.
wanted to, try to grow and have a family. That was a time for me to give it up. I didn't want to do that as a
Yeah,
mom.
sure. Fair
That
enough.
wasn't something that I wanted to do. And so I ended up going to school to become a dental assistant. I didn't like that job at all. I couldn't handle
That's
it.
pretty soulless.
It it was very soulless, but the big thing is it was the noise. Like, imagine being 8 hours of
Oh,
drilling and suction
oh
noises.
my
I was
God.
like,
Yeah.
"I'm gonna lose my mind in this place. I gotta get out of here. I can't do this."
Yeah.
So then I applied for a job at a bank to be a bank teller,
Okay.
and I literally fell in love with it. I was like, structure,
Mm.
business, prestige.
Hmm.
Back then banking was very prestigious,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I'm in. And I started doing this job and I really loved it. I really enjoyed the connection and the regular clients. I felt, because I'm such a relationship person,
Right.
and it just took off. And I ended up being in banking for 13 years and becoming an assistant VP in the banking industry and becoming an executive and becoming a regional sales manager and running banks. And they would send me into failing branches and have me turn them around. And that's what
Wow.
I ended up doing. And I loved it. Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute. So they would send you into to turn other banks around. So you had a very keen understanding of what wasn't working.
Right.
What would you notice? Because I'm asking this because right now I do business brokerage as well as commercial real estate, and I see a lot of businesses failing. I mean, the economy is tough right now, um, but digging into people's books and trying to say, well, it doesn't even look like you spent too much. You just didn't have enough gross revenue. Like going through everything, um, you start to see patterns sometimes in the cost, overhead costs going up but not adjusting pricing, things like that. Different world. I know banking is a
Right.
different world, but what would you say was the number one thing that you noticed amongst failing branches that needed to be fixed?
Leadership style.
Mm,
1000%. It's relationship driven. And, my first day into any branch that I would go into or work at, or, walk in and do assessments. I would walk in and do assessments. I would make it a casual barbecue day.
mm,
And I wanted people to understand that I am approachable. I care about you. I would turn rooms in the branches into personal development rooms and put books in there on how to handle, a divorce or single mom stuff or whatever, all kinds of different books on success or whatever it was, so that people would have an option instead of sitting in the lunchroom, watching soap operas or something. I wanted to let them know that I cared about them. And I would set up a little center with cookies and stuff for people to come in. And I would set up a little area just for kids, for when people came in with their kids, for banking, with toys and Legos and things like that. So I think my leadership style and my commitment to relationships was the key.
You know what you said there that was so amazing? I was talking about like finance and numbers, and what you said is totally intangible. And it's the one thing that doesn't show up on a P&L. It doesn't show up, and yet, no one ever asked me about it. So when people call me, they go, well, why is the profit only this? Why is it only that? They never say like what kind of leadership was there, what things could be done from a management perspective to make people want to enjoy either this restaurant more or call this
Right.
HVAC company more often or whatever. And you're totally right. It's a humanity thing.
Nothing ROI is better than caring and
Yeah.
relationships.
It also
Nothing.
doesn't cost. Yeah, it doesn't cost anything. So ROI
Nothing
is
ROI is more than that.
100%. Yeah.
And you will see your bottom line. You will see everything grow if that is your number one focus and you operate from that place and your team sees you operate from that place. That is contagious.
Yeah.
Nothing ROI is like it, in my opinion.
You know what's so difficult about that it for people that it doesn't come naturally to, like you're aligned spiritually, which I imagine means you have a natural like empathy, compassion, these things that have helped you in business. Those aren't natural for everybody. And I
Mm.
think there's like great business people out there, or people who have successful business, or maybe they have money, that those skill sets don't come naturally. How would you tell a leader, like I'm sure you had to coach other leaders in banks
Hmm.
on how to do these things. How do you tap into a person's ability to be empathetic or compassionate with people when the book says to fire them? How do you do that?
Well, I think we have to get real with the fact that some people never will. Some people just aren't wired that way. And if they're not wired that way, they shouldn't be in certain industries. Maybe they shouldn't be in specific leadership roles. Maybe they should
Mm,
be solopreneurs. Maybe they should be doing something that's more research related or something where they're more behind the scenes or and not running teams or not in customer service.
right.
I mean, people are in the wrong positions for who they are wired to be. And it really impacts. Or people that own companies, they hire people and put them in the wrong positions. And they're in positions that they shouldn't be in, and it's affecting the business in ways that they might not even be considering. But the energy of an entire team, the energy that comes from a leader is really important. But the people that are interested in it, and it all it does is take curiosity. All it does is take a little spark of curiosity for somebody to go, what would it be like if I cared more, if I was more compassionate? Let me study compassion a little bit.
Right.
Let me figure out, do I have, because I believe most everybody has that within them. And it's like everything else. You have to cultivate it. You have to
Yeah.
grow it like you have to, the seeds planted, you've got to cultivate that. You've got to be interested in how to bring that forth in your life instead of just keeping it in.
I actually I struggled with this coming up like from an early age, and I have a degree in psychology and neurobiology. I wanted to be a counselor, and when I started doing clinical, I realized it was not aligned with where I was in my life. Like I was not a compassionate person. I was
Mm.
not like caring. My answer to people's problems was not to look deeper inside. It was to try to fix it, right? Because you want that fast solution. And a 20-year-old man honestly is probably not going to make the best like counselor. I'll be honest. There's people out there who probably do well at it,
True.
but you need time in the world, I think, to like have your own failures. I think like some of us are too arrogant to have the compassion that we need because maybe at that point in our lives, like I didn't feel like I had failures. From 22 to 32, totally different, right?
Yeah.
Failure after failure, hardship after hardship, it makes you compassionate to people's struggles. And I'm
Hmm.
getting emotional right now, but
Oh.
the reality is that what changed for me talking to people and coming up over the last like 7 years running my own business was that the understanding that we are all connected. There's It's so hard to convey to people that what I do to you affects me as well, and what you do to me affects you, and that we're all just mirrors of each other. And so when you feel that like spiritual energy with people, it's so much harder to do wrong by people or feel like callous towards them. And I think I'm emotional right now because there's a lot of things in our business right now and people in my life who are going through a lot of
A
challenges.
lot.
And as a leader, it's really difficult to guide them in the right way when you feel like you're not equipped for it.
Yeah.
Or like, so the only thing I know to do is be compassionate.
Yeah.
And
And
at this
care.
point, which is so different from the way I was when I was 25.
Yeah. And care. Like
Yeah.
genuinely care about them and genuinely be curious about their life. And, this is going to lead into what we're going to get into. When you decide, I'm going to make understanding, and you can't understand another person and what they're going through without dialogue, without caring, without being curious, without asking the right
Right.
questions. And once you get to the point where you really decide the core, the center of my life is really going to be to seek understanding, and care. That's when everything
I think
changes.
too, and to add to that, that's absolutely right. But I think it also comes from like self love. I think it comes from spending a lot of time, like you said, sitting by a stream. Like I spent so many years after my divorce, like meditating every single day, every day, like looking inward, and listening to the kind of like peace and clarity that came from that. And then it's so hard to give to other people when you're not giving to yourself. And
Oh,
so,
impossible.
and yeah, so
Impossible. I mean, you can, but I think it's fake.
yeah,
If you, I mean, you can attempt to do that, and
sure.
that could be your goal, but I don't believe it's 100% genuine if that isn't anything that you can feel or give
Yeah,
or pour into yourself. How do you pour that out into, or pour that into other people
yeah,
if you can't do that for yourself? I think you want to, and you can try. I don't know that it is 100% there and authentic and really hits the mark if you really don't have the capacity to do that for yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that we're talking about like this kind of spiritual and philosophical side that has real world implication in organizations like banks, like real estate companies, like everywhere, that people who are not doing this deep work, people who are not fixing their trauma or not gaining compassion and love and understanding, have a real negative impact on the bottom line of a company, but not just the bottom line, because that impacts how many people you can hire, who has to get fired, whether or not somebody's going to be able to make a Christmas bonus and get that pool in their backyard like Chevy Chase and his in Christmas Vacation. The point is, these things we're talking about have such deeper implications.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's the same in personal as it is in business. What's the turnover ratio in your life in
Hmm.
terms of your friends and the people in your life? What's your turnover ratio? What's your turnover ratio in your business? If you've got a
Yeah.
high turnover ratio, you better take a look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You better take a hardcore look at what's going on, how you're treating other people, how you're coming off. And yes, even though, I'm a really honest person, I'm a very direct communicator, but I also want to consider I'm not responsible for how that person receives what I have to say and what I
Right.
share and what my truth is. How they receive it is really up to them and their lens. But I do have control over how I deliver things.
Sure.
And, I think that's really important for us to understand and really look at the inner workings of communication and dialogue and how we're affecting other people. And, where is it coming from us? Is this a self-serving conversation? There's a lot of inner workings to it.
Yeah.
But I think if your turnover in your life and your turnover in your business is high, you've got a problem,
Yeah.
and it isn't outward.
Hmm. Wow. You're absolutely right. Um, let's go back to your story. Okay, so you're working in banking, you're turning over banks, you're adding value, you're adding culture, you're changing things.
Having
Um,
fun. I was having
having
so much
fun. It
fun.
sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happens next?
So I pick up my daughter at school one day. I'm running late, being a single mom. I raised my daughter by myself. I ended up being divorced a few months after she was born. And I'm, running a bank, I was very corporate and I was doing all the things. And back then, I mean, I thought, I'm going to show my daughter how to have it all. And
Hmm.
so she was in before school care. And then I would pick her up at after school care because I was at the bank for, 10, 12 hours a day. Um, to be successful. And I picked her up late. I was rushing, and I was always rushing. I was always speeding. I had so many speeding tickets. And so we get home, and it's just a normal night, and I'm making dinner, and we're on the couch, and she's playing with her Game Boy. And we heard a really, really loud noise coming from behind us. And there was where we were sitting on the couch behind us was the kids' playroom. And it was separated by a wall of kind of windows, and that led to the back door. I turned to see what the noise was. And it was three men in masks, all dressed in black with guns, just rushing straight at us.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Everything, I just started screaming, no, no. And I went to turn to my daughter. She was to my left. And I went to turn towards her. And before I could even grab her or anything, I was being grabbed by the back of the head and the hair and shoved to the ground, shoved to the floor with a gun to my head. And then I felt a knee in my back. And that's when everything slowed down. When I saw them walking in, I'm going to straighten up because I'm sliding, like you said.
Yeah.
When they broke in, everything slowed down. Everything turned to slow motion. The brain immediately kicks into protective mode or something, and everything just slowed down. And then the sounds start. Then you hear the duct tape unrolling. You hear their voices starting to make demands. I can't see my daughter. I don't hear her. I don't know what's happening. And you're screaming, no, no, no. And I mean, that was all that would come out. I mean, there's no thinking in a moment like that.
Off.
Yeah, there's no thinking. Everything stops. Wow. Everything's gone. Everything's gone. Everything's black.
So what happens next?
They duct tape us. They begin to tell me they've been following me for a long time. I found out later, at least 2 months. They had been stalking me and tracking me, my every move. They said, we know where your daughter goes to school. We know where your best friend lives. We know everything about you. And if you don't do everything we say perfectly, we are going to murder your daughter first, and we're going to kill you after. And we're going to strap bombs to your bodies and make sure that you understand that you need to do everything we tell you to do, or you're going to die. And they unraveled their plan, or they revealed their plan, which was to take my daughter from me in the morning after 14 hours of being held hostage and basically tortured and verbally assaulted. And it's that brainwashing technique that kicks in during a kidnapping hostage situation. And they did. They took my child from me in the morning, and they forced me to rob the bank for them.
These guys sound very professional. Like, it couldn't have been the first time they'd tried something like this.
It was really sophisticated and thought out. I mean, this was a very premeditated crime that they put together, and they did they made a lot of mistakes that I found out about later. But in terms of the plan and how they carried this out was very sophisticated, actually.
Wow. Okay, so next morning they take your daughter away and they say you're going to rob a bank.
Yep.
Was it a bank that you worked at?
It was the bank that I managed. So they had stalked me at the bank. They had come into the branch, one of them, and then his girlfriend came in to say, hey, we need to leave. But he came in and sat at my desk and pretended he wanted to become a customer, saying that he wanted to find out about investments. And he was he was really creepy. I remember asking my assistant manager to come kind of help me because I was uncomfortable with who this person was. And he was dressed in a gold and black vest with no undershirt underneath it. And he had really distinct eyes, and he was stocky and he had big kind of bulging red eyes. And I remember that he was an interesting person for sure. And he was at my desk for way too long. And before he left, he handed me a fake business card, or a business card. It might've been real. Maybe he did have a real photography business. He said he was in photography. And so he left. His
How
girlfriend
long
came in
before the kidnapping was that?
the day before.
He had done that the day
The
before?
day before. Yeah.
Wow, that's creepy.
The day before.
Did it feel ominous when you were like after that? I mean,
No, I mean,
you didn't
I
think
was
anything
busy.
bad.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, I was busy. I just put his business card in my right
Yeah.
hand top drawer of my desk and went about my day. You know, you're running a bank, you're
Yeah.
running a branch. You got things to do.
Let it go.
You know, he walked out and I was like, thank God that's over, you know? Yeah.
But it wasn't
Yeah.
over. He came
But
back.
it wasn't over. Yeah. Far from over.
So they take your daughter in the morning and then they take you to your bank. And then what?
I was given instructions that I had 5 minutes from the time the Brinks truck leaves after the money dropped to get back out to my car because he was waiting in the car, in the back seat, crouched down with a gun, a walkie-talkie, and what he said was a detonation device. And I went into the branch. I waited for Brinks. I tried to act normal. I don't know what that means really, because that's when I left the house and they grabbed my arm and said, let's go. And my daughter was in the closet, duct taped. And I just heard her screaming and everything faded. And I became like a robot. I felt very robotic. And you probably have heard about it, and I've heard about it, and I never really thought about it or believed it, but it was an out-of-body experience. Like, I did not feel attached to my body. I did not feel attached to what I was doing and what was happening at all. And again, I think that's the mind's way of protecting what's happening, because if I was in touch with everything that was happening and my daughter being in that closet and those screams, I think I would have gone crazy. I would have been locked up in a loony bin or something for sure after that. But I went into the vault. I brought someone in there with me because everything's in dual control in banking. And I said, this is what's happened. This is what's going on. And this is what I need to do. And I have dynamite sticks on my back. Please lift up my jacket and tell me if write down any identifying marks or numbers on these sticks on my back. And I just started shoving money in a duffel bag and had to run out.
I mean, I assume they helped you at that point. And
I just said, this is what's going on. Get ready to shut the bank down. Get ready to call corporate security.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I just put money in the duffel bag and put it up on my shoulder and walked out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is just crazy.
And people asking me, where are you going? You got an early meeting? And I'm like, not exactly. Bolt to the door. Yeah.
Oh my God. So you walk out and bring them the money and they think,
yeah,
great,
so
we got away with it.
I throw the money in the front seat over the center console into the passenger seat. I just hurled it over there, get in. And he told me where to drive, told me to get out, told me where my car would be parked, get out. Walk in this direction. Your car's going to be waiting for you. You need to drive straight home. Don't call the cops. Don't anything. Straight home. So I did everything they said, driving, and they were supposed to remove the dynamite sticks from my back as part of their plan. That they told me, if we get the money, we'll remove all the dynamite from all of you, and that'll be it. You'll be safe. Well, they didn't. And I didn't know if I was going to blow up at any moment. I'm driving back to the house thinking, everybody next to me at this red light is having a normal morning. I want to scream. I want to scream, somebody please help me. And I couldn't. And I ended up back at the house not knowing what I was going to arrive to. Are they going to be alive? Are they going to be there? And I ended up going in the door and saying, Bria, Bria, and hearing my daughter say, Mommy, I'm back here. And I found her in the closet. And
she was by herself?
My roommate at the time was duct taped up on the bed.
Oh, wow.
And my daughter had hopped over to her and helped her. And I said, you guys need to run to the neighbor. They left the dynamite sticks on me. And my roommate said, no, they ripped them off of us. They tore them off of us like it was nothing. She said, I think I could do this. And she went and got scissors and cut the duct tape off of me and took the dynamite sticks and put them outside on the retaining wall. And we ran up to the neighbors, which was really far, and up a really steep hill and through a gate that we had to push a button and say, open the gate, help us, help us.
Wow.
And ended up running up to the neighbors and just pretty much collapsing there. And then,
And that, so I didn't know your roommate was a part of this too.
yeah.
Was she there when they came in?
No, so we were on a softball team. We were on a softball league, and it was our last game of the season, and it was a late game, and I didn't want to go because I didn't want my daughter to be out that late. And so she was at the softball game by herself. So she came home after the softball game at like 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, tipsy, and walked into that.
Oh, and they just
And
grab
they
her and,
took her as soon as she walked in the door
oh
and
my God.
put her down on, and she was fighting them, and it got really, really
Scary.
really tense because she was cussing and screaming at them and not having it. And they had to get really rough with her and duct tape her and put her in a back room for a while and said we took care of her. I didn't know what that meant until they let her come back into the living room much later.
That is unbelievable. Okay, so you guys run up the hill, talk to the neighbor, and then I assume, the guys, the kidnappers and robbers are long gone by that
They're
point.
long gone.
They
Yeah,
hightailed it.
they did.
And what happens next?
The next part of the trauma really begins when the FBI shows up and they took my daughter from me and wouldn't let us be together. She was clinging to my leg and everything that we'd just been through. They said they separated us again, and that was horrific. The FBI starts questioning me and for hours, and I didn't know. It doesn't enter the mind of somebody who's just been through what we had just been through that you're a suspect right out the gate.
Right.
Didn't think about it, didn't realize it, didn't anything for a while. But I was questioned all day, and my daughter was in a separate room and my roommate was in a separate room. They separated all of us. And then they sent me to a hotel and just gave me an address on a piece of paper that was ripped with an address and keys to a rental car because I wasn't allowed into the home. It was a crime scene, obviously. And I went to a hotel and the PTSD, that's when the post-trauma, the nightmare that is post-trauma, that is PTSD, that is how do you grapple in the aftermath? How do you make sense of all of this? How do you reconnect to your body? How do you parent a child in the aftermath of something like that? A child that's nothing like the child that she was yesterday morning.
I can't imagine. Yeah. But so she came with you to the hotel though? Yeah.
Yes.
At that point you were reunited.
At that point we were reunited after the FBI was done with their initial questioning.
Gosh. Yeah, it's unfathomable. And when you started telling me this story a couple weeks ago, it's so hard to even believe that, somebody's gone through it. You see it in movies all the time and documentaries, and of course everybody watches true crime, but that is so traumatic to be stalked, to be forced into, betraying the trust of your company and then be a suspect and then be separated from your daughter. I mean, that's within 48 hours, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everything changed.
It was my whole life, pun intended, blew up. Like it was in absolute, it was, yeah, my life was in a million pieces in a blink of an eye.
So how do you start to recover from that? Like what happens next?
I mean, there's a lot to it, and I know we're short on time, but
Yeah.
there's so much to the recovery piece that is a long time. They ended up having to question my daughter, and I think one of the biggest blessings, my brother showed up at the hotel. He said there was no Michelle. Michelle was gone. You couldn't even say your own name. We were so traumatized. My daughter couldn't go to the bathroom by herself. She couldn't be in school. She'd hear a noise and duck under her desk. I mean, the trauma was so severe. The PTSD was really severe. The nightmares, she would say, I hear doors slamming in my head, Mommy, help me. Like it was bad. And they wanted to question her. So they took her to Children's Hospital, to the family trauma center down there. And they separated us again. They said, you can't be here. I was in shambles. I was crouched down. I was squatted down, back up against a wall, kind of rocking, just waiting for her to come out like I was losing it, you know? And I remember I coped a lot by just kind of rocking, and I hadn't hardly had any sleep. And this woman walked up to me and was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not okay." And she said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "We were kidnapped, and I just broke down to this woman, and they just took her from me again. Everybody keeps taking my daughter from me. I was just a wreck." And she said, we need to get you some help. And she ended up becoming, I'm getting emotional. She was such a godsend. She ended up becoming my trauma therapist for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And she was just a lifesaver. And pretty soon the FBI called me and said, we caught them. America's Most Wanted was involved and caught one of them that escaped till Milwaukee. And they said these people have pretty serious gang ties, and we think that you could be in danger, and we're doing a risk assessment. And I said, "Well, how long is that going to take?" And they said, "Well, it could take several weeks." And I was like, I'm not keeping my child in harm's way for several weeks while you figure out whether or not you're going to put us in protective custody. So I called her grandma, her father's mom, who lived in Alaska at the time, and said, "This is what's happening. Can I bring her there and just drop her off, and I'll stay a few days and get her settled, and I'll come back and figure out what to do. I need to get her safe. I need to get her away from all of this." And so that's what I did. And while I was in Alaska, I received a very clear calling to come back and give away all of our things and drive to Alaska by myself.
Wow.
And I was arguing with spirit, God, universe, whatever you decide to call it or refer to that as, our higher being. And I was like, absolutely not. No way. I was just kidnapped and held hostage. Are you crazy?
Wow.
And I really heard God say, "Do you trust me?" And I said, "Yeah." And it's that same voice that was been there since I was little. And I said, "Yes." And it was like, "You'll do this then." And I did. And I got in my car with 104,000 miles on it, with hardly any money, and a small little cooler like this, the little blue and white plastic coolers, with some cans of tuna and some crackers and some cans of beans and water. And I hit the road.
That's a long drive.
It was 9 days, which is
through
the
the
title
mountains.
of my memoir, is 9 days.
Oh my gosh.
For this reason. And I camped the whole way and slept in my car, except for one night because it was pouring rain. And I just had to find a dingy motel that would, let me crash out for the night.
Wow. And where did you move to? Anchorage?
It was 30 miles north of Anchorage in a little town called Eagle River.
Okay. I've been to Alaska a few times.
You have?
My uncle is a famous artist in Anchorage.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah, Duke Russell.
Oh my gosh, I used to go to the best place for these little fresh halibut bites.
Oh, was it
in
Humpies?
Downtown Anchorage? What was
Humpies?
It was Humpies. It was Humpies. Yes,
he did the mural for Humpies.
You are kidding me.
The signs and
oh
then the
my
mural
gosh,
inside.
Stop it right now.
Uh-huh.
It was Humpies. It was my favorite place to
so
go.
Good.
Oh, it was so good.
We've all got Humpies shirts. And
I cannot believe this connection right now.
Yeah.
See how the universe is doing what's going on right now?
Yeah. Oh, man. So how long were you in Alaska?
1 year.
Just a year, a recovery year. It's like a reset, right? I mean, like you go out into the mountains and
it was
everything is like different. It looks different from California, feels different.
It was away from everything. We were away from everything. We were away from the news. We were away from the newspapers. We were away from anybody being able to recognize us. I mean, I was so in post-trauma, basically crazy mode. I chopped all my daughter's hair off. I dyed my hair dark auburn because I didn't want to be recognized, because we were on the news and they were still on the loose, and I was losing it for a minute, you know? And I couldn't really go out. I couldn't go to a bank. I couldn't go to an ATM. My therapist had to drive me to the ATM and sit in the car with me during my panic attacks and crying. And she would inch until she stayed with me and kept taking me to the bank until I could walk up to an ATM without having a panic attack. Like
Wow.
it was a lot. The recovery piece is a big, big thing.
Yeah.
And it was that road trip to Alaska that changed everything. It changed everything. The quiet. I was back out in nature because I had gotten so far away from that, being in banking and being corporate and being, on the grind and on the hustle and for so long, and being a single mom. I just didn't have time to really pour into myself in this way for so long. So in a way, this crime, it broke me down in a lot of ways, but it broke me wide open. And this road trip to Alaska, talk about being broken wide open. You just get on a road trip for 9 days like that with God and your thoughts and your memories and your history and your trauma and your pain and everything else. And all of a sudden you start wondering, what happened to these guys that make them turn into into these kind of people that made them do something like this to a mother and a child? What happened to them?
Yeah. I
And
mean, do they
that
even
seed
know?
was planted on the road to Alaska. What happened to them to make them become this type of person and do this kind of thing?
That's, again, going back to like empathy and compassion. That's some deep stuff right there. So I know there's a second part to your story. We're only halfway through, really, like in terms of what happens next, but do you have time to keep going?
Yeah. I mean, what time is it?
10:30.
Yeah. I have another 30 minutes. I have to be at my hair appointment at 11:30.
Okay, perfect.
I pushed it at 30 minutes just in case.
Yeah, that was a
But
good
yeah, I
move.
mean, I know you can cut this into 2 parts if you want to, however you want to
Well,
do
no,
this. But
I think I just want to get the second half of the story. So
so yeah, I ended up driving to Alaska for 9 days. That question wouldn't leave me alone. And during our time in Alaska, it was the most healing, incredible time that I can't think about another place that I could have been called to for us to heal and get away from everything. The only big trigger was during the winter, everybody started wearing face masks,
Oh yeah.
beanies with holes cut in them over their faces because it's so cold. And we were driving down the road. I was on my way taking my daughter to school one morning, and the parents and the kids, people were in face masks, and we were like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. I looked at her and I said, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah, I think I'm okay. Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're okay. It's only because it's cold. They're just staying warm. It's not, nobody's in a mask to rob us or hurt us or anything like." But the flashbacks, like from something like that, if people
Yeah.
don't understand PTSD, one little thing like that will spin you out
Yeah.
and put you back there. And the flashbacks and all of it starts coming back to you in moments like that. And if learning how to cope in that road trip and having time, because I drove up there during the summer in July, we had time to heal and be out in nature and find laughter and joy again and start,
Yeah.
really, I started reconnecting with the person that I had been disconnected with for a really long time, and began to heal and began to repair my relationship with spirit and my relationships in my life that I had ignored, especially the one with myself.
Yeah, it's kind of like they say, like, no atheists in foxholes. It's like those crazy traumatic events bring you back to like your core. I mean, everything else, like you said, it gets stripped away, and so
Right.
what's left is that voice that you stopped listening to a while ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you guys lived in Alaska for about a year, and how old is your daughter again at that time?
When I arrived at the house in Alaska, I promised her that I would be there before her 8th birthday. And my 9-day road trip ended pulling up to the house during her 8th birthday party.
Oh wow.
She came running out in her party dress.
And you had somebody who lived in Eagle River already? Like
Her grandma
her grandma.
and
Okay.
her aunt on her dad's side.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Great place to go recover.
Oh, it was the place. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I can't think of a better place to go. Just reconnect,
Yeah.
disconnect from everything back in San Diego and reconnect with yourself and reconnect with nature and reconnect with um, just a greater sense of being.
Yeah, in Alaska, you don't have to go to nature. Like nature comes to you. Like
Oh
talk about
yeah.
sitting by a stream. It's like they're everywhere, and
And
you know.
Eagle River, the house, her grandma lived on Eagle
Oh
River,
wow.
and I would go walk the river, and it was spectacular. And I would just get in the car and we would drive to Denali, and then we went up to Fairbanks, and I would pick her up from school and say, "Let's just road trip for the weekend, and let's go trekking across Matanuska Glacier and go
Yeah.
explore some ice caves." And because I'm that kind of woman, like
Yeah.
I'm very adventurous, like I jump off cliffs and boats, and I'm super adventurous. Like I'm going in caves, and
Yeah.
and I was like, let's go on an adventure. And it woke that back up in me, and I was able to, share that with my girl and really begin to understand that I have to, as a mom, I have to figure out how to teach her that life can be joyful again,
Mm.
and that we don't have to live in fear, and that we can, really figure out a different way to live life than in fear and angry and resentful and hateful and all of those kinds of things. I had to figure that piece out as a mother, because if I didn't, and I was going around saying, I hate them, they're monsters. And of course, initially, did I feel that way? Yes. Did I
Yeah.
feel like line them up in front of a firing squad? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But once you get over that trauma and you understand, you decide, it's really a choice. You have to decide. I can't live the rest of my life this way, and I cannot teach my child to live her life this way and hear me say these things, or see me spiral into drinking or pills to numb out, or saying angry or bitter or hateful. And the men who did this were men of color, become prejudiced or become distrustful of all men. There's
Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
ways you can go and hold on to all of this negative, heavy, life altering garbage, in my opinion. It's garbage.
Hmm.
And is it normal to feel those things at first? Yeah, sure. But the longer you carry it, you're just filling a bag up with negative stuff that is going to weigh you down and get you absolutely nowhere positive that has any kind of light source in it,
Yeah.
And so what do you do if you want light source in your life? You decide, okay, how am I going to bring light source into my life? How am I going to teach my daughter that there's still light source out there that we can invite into our lives and still enjoy and still experience?
Yeah.
And that was my choice. And I said, okay, I got to be the best mom, because if I don't, I'm going to harm her more than they ever did. I will cause her so much more damage than they ever did if I prolong this by
Yeah.
hanging on to all that for years. That I'm harming her year after year after. They harmed her for one night. And yes, the aftermath is terrible. But when you then hang on to all of that pain and the anger, and she watches you and she adopts any of that or absorbs any of that, I'm harming her year over year over year, day
Yeah.
after day after day after day. If I don't figure out how to drop that and adopt a new mindset and adopt a new way and adopt a, a belief that there's something better.
That's so important. A lot of people, though, get stuck in that trauma cycle that they never really either process or let go of these things, and they do. That trauma continues to harm them day after day, and like keep them from experiencing life fully, keep them from experiencing love, keep them from building more new relationships. And how do you convince somebody to let those things go and kind of move on? How did you actually do that?
You don't. You just you do that,
Mm.
and you let other people watch you, and you
Mm.
let your child see you. You don't convince anybody. You just be that thing. And you show up in the world like that every single day and people see you, that they're going to see it. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to convince anybody of anything.
Mm.
They go, wow, how did you, looking at you and meeting you, you would never in a million years think you've lived the life that
Oh
you've
no,
lived.
you're so full of life. And I think that's why too I was saying there's a second part to this, because some people's stories stop where yours just started, like
Yeah.
some people's stories, and of course that's a huge thing and it defines a lot of like a story you tell, but it's almost as if it happened to someone else, like for you.
Right.
Like you've grown so much from whatever that was before
Yeah.
and after. And it's so strange, not that you have like gratitude for the incident, but a gratitude for the process that came after.
That's true. And I think that again, the road trip to Alaska, it wasn't just about this crime. I mean, when you're held hostage for 14 hours and you think you are going to be blown into pieces and your child's going to be murdered, you suddenly put everything into perspective. I had to come to terms with my whole life.
Yeah.
My childhood. I had to be at peace with the relationships and everything with my dad, my mom, my decisions I made when I was in survival mode, the life that I had lived, some of the choices that I had made. I had to come to peace with everything. And when I was on that road trip to Alaska, this wasn't just about the crime. This was about, they broke the door to my home down, but all that violence brought back everything from my childhood I'd been running from my entire life.
Wow.
I had to face it all. And I did on that road trip. I mean, I faced it all. And I began to want to not only understand what happened to them, but I wanted to understand my mom and I wanted to understand my dad. And I wanted to understand their decisions and who they were and how they grew up and how that shaped them. And I just really began to be somebody who was a seeker of understanding myself and others.
Yeah.
And becoming that person and being committed to becoming a better human and a better mom and a better woman and a better friend and understanding. You start showing up in that way, people are going to see that and they're going to go, wow, if she can do it, I can do it. And it's a decision. It's a switch that you can flip. And it's in your control to flip that switch to go, guess what? I'm not going to be pissed off anymore. I'm going to try to
I'm not going to be
understand.
a victim forever though. Like I think that victim mentality for so many people is so pervasive and it just lasts and lasts and lasts. And it's hard. I mean, I understand it's hard to get over any of those things. You never get over it. You get through it. You get better. And I think another big part of your story after, this trip to Alaska, you went from, years in banking and finance and everything before that, but what happened next? What changed for you after that?
So when I ran away at 15, I still continued to go to school, to high school. Well, then my dad had the cops come find me and take me out from school. So school wasn't safe anymore. So I dropped out of school and I hated, I always just didn't, I really liked school. I like learning. But I dropped out and it had always bothered me. So when I was in Alaska, I went and got my GED for the very first time.
Oh, wow.
I went to college. I got my GED. I went to college. And I was so excited to be sitting in a college classroom. It was one of my biggest dreams that I could never have for myself because of my circumstances growing up. And so I went to college. And while that was happening and while I was in Alaska, I was like, well, what am I going to do? I don't want to go back to banking. Like, I can't imagine walking in a vault ever again. I can't imagine telling my daughter, I'm going to go back to the job that was the worst thing that ever happened because, caused the worst thing that ever happened to us. I just couldn't do that. So I remembered watching the movie Bridges of Madison County with Clint Eastwood. You know the movie?
Yeah.
Okay, so I watched this movie when I was little, and I remember sitting there going, I'm supposed to be Clint Eastwood in this movie. What he's doing, traveling around with a camera, everything in my being was like, that's what I'm supposed to do. And so I went to school for PR and communications and ended up finally getting my degree and picked up a camera and said, I'm going to teach myself absolutely everything I can teach myself, and decided to become a videographer and a photographer and started my own company, Verb Media Group. And I just wanted to capture moments in life and people and expressions and tell visual stories. And again, it's a way for me, I think, to have people, visualize and have a greater understanding of things in the world, and maybe even the way that I see the world. And that was it. That was the biggest turn for me, thinking I could go back to corporate. And I decided that that wasn't the path, or listening to that inner calling. And you said sometimes people hear that inner calling and they rationalize their way out of it because they're like, oh, risk versus reward. If I hear that call and it is loud and clear, none of that enters my mind. I go.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has to do something, I just think a lot of people choose the thing that feels safe, and you were tired of feeling that way, right? Like you took the power you had, the free will that you had, and used it to like overcome whatever safety or security you thought was there, right? Because it was an illusion.
I was going to say, I mean, safe is an illusion.
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, I thought I was safe in a banking career for 13 years, sitting in my house having dinner. And that, we know what happened with that. I mean, safe, what is safe?
Mm-hmm.
And if I hear that calling and I trust 100% in what direction that is telling me to go, I'm just going to trust it. And has it been hard? Really, really hard. I've gone through really hard times. Trusting that. I mean, I've gone a couple years living off Top Ramen. I mean, I've gone through some really difficult financial times, even after the pandemic, because, there was no filming of anything. There were no live events. There were no person-to-person anything. Our entire industry pretty much died. So I ended up pivoting and getting into podcasting and virtual stuff. But even so, that wasn't anything compared to what my business was doing before.
Yeah.
But I decided that that's what I was going to do. And then the criminal trial happened. And after all of that was over, I moved back to San Diego. My daughter, we missed it. It's hard. It's a hard living in Alaska.
Yeah.
With the darkness and the cold. And I'm glad I experienced it, but that wasn't the life that I could live long term. So we came back and decided it's time to just let all of this go. And it's time for us to say to the one man that turned around in the courtroom and said he was sorry during the sentencing, let's write him a letter and tell him we're letting all of this go. We don't see you as a monster anymore. And we hope that you don't see yourself as a monster. And we hope you can heal too. And here's a little bit about me. Because you broke down the door to my house and were calling me a spoiled white bitch. Let me tell you how spoiled I've been growing up. Let me tell you about my life. We have more in common than we don't. And here's what happened to me. And I hope now you understand that we're not as different as you guys thought we were. I just worked really hard for what I had, for what you guys destroyed. But I'm not hanging on to any of that anymore. And I hope you can let it all go too. And we sent that letter to San Quentin State Prison.
Wow.
We never expected a response, didn't know if he would read it, didn't anything. And during the pandemic, I got an email that says, we are in possession of a letter from this person in response to you. And I called Brett. I'm like, oh my gosh, get down here. Like, they're going to mail it. And I don't want to read it and get it out of the mailbox without you.
Yeah.
And we set up a camera and we taped us opening it and reading it. And it was a 3-page letter from Robert Ortiz, the man they called Bones. And from there, we ended up, since then, we had a victim offender dialogue with him and his mom and his sister, his family. We ended up going to San Quentin State Prison and visiting one of the other attackers and sitting with him and his family. And today, on the anniversary of the crime, I released a podcast episode interviewing one of our attackers and talking about his healing journey. And it's the one we sent the letter to. That letter changed his entire life in prison.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Where can we find the interview?
It released today. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify. It's on
And the name of your
YouTube.
podcast?
The name of my podcast is Soul Wide Open,
Soul Wide Open.
because that's how I live my life since this happened. I told you it broke me open, and that's how I live my life now. Radically honest and radically open and raw and real, and yeah.
You had mentioned there's also is there a documentary coming out about this?
So you can see the 48 hour special that
48
came
hours.
out. The 48-hour special is really good. My first book is called Held Hostage. That was turned into a Lifetime movie. But my second book, which is a memoir, this is the work. That's the work I'm most proud of. And it is told from the perspective of the 9-day road trip, and is all about the 9-day road trip and flashing back to my childhood and flashing back to the crime and everything that happened on that road trip. That is so much fun and scary.
Yeah.
And getting to Alaska, and then everything that happened after that, all the way up to us getting ready to walk in the door to meet Robert and his family. And it's an amazing, I'm going to say it. I love it. It's an amazing book. I hope everybody goes and picks it up. It's on Amazon. It's at Barnes and Noble, wherever you get it. It's Audible, Kindle. You can get it Audible, Kindle. I narrated
I'm
the
gonna
entire
get it.
book. Yeah.
I love memoirs. Yeah, I am such a sucker for a memoir, especially the kind of journey that you're talking about having and reflection there. I mean, and that's why I have this podcast. To me, it's like everyone deserves an opportunity to tell their unique story. Your unique story is filled with some crazy highlights, but everybody's story is phenomenal. And like when you really dig into it and you break it down, we're all unique. We're all.
What happened to you? Who are you? That's what I wanted to know from our attackers, and that wanting to understand and that curiosity led me to interviewing him. And exactly what you just said, his healing is just as significant as my own, and his story and his transformation is just as important and inspiring as my own. And I wanted to share that.
Well, you are such an inspiration. It's phenomenal to talk to you. So
thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time to share this, and I hope everybody goes out, buys your book, reads your story, and I know I will be listening to that podcast because I'm hooked.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have it out in the world. There's part 1 and part 2. And so, go check it out, download it, come see me on Instagram, TikTok. I'm all over the place, just spreading lots and lots and lots of love out there. So,
well, thank you, Michelle Renee, for coming on The Guru and the Good Dude.
Thank you, Tim, so much for having me.
We'll have to have a cigar soon, and
I'm ready. Let's have a cigar and a good whiskey.
Yeah.
Or tequila. I'm more of a tequila girl.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to Guru and the Good Dude, and we'll see you next time.